Hey, it's Dan Melnick. I'm the CEO and co founder of Zing, and I'm proud to be a sponsor of this podcast. So please check us out today as we can help fuel your business growth. myzing.io. Thank you.
Firstly, thank you very much, Mark, for giving me opportunity to interview you for my YouTube channel and for my podcast and for my channels.
Yeah, no worries.
So I've gone through your profile. I can see you're doing a lot of work. So I thought to tell about your work to my audience. So can you please introduce yourself to my audience?
Can you say that again? Let me turn the volume up. I'm having trouble hearing you. Just a moment.
Thank
Go
you
ahead.
very much. Yeah, thank you very much for being on my show. And I thought to tell about your work to my audience. I have seen your work. I can see the work that you're doing on your platforms. So I thought to tell about your work to my audience. So can you please introduce yourself to my audience?
Yeah, sure. So, look, thank you for having me, Sai. My name is Mark Tossell. I am a solution engineer at Tableau. I've been here for 2 years and 4 months now. And I essentially work with our sales teams to design intelligent solutions for our customers using Tableau. And then prior to joining here, I spent 4 years in consulting. So I co-founded and co-led a Salesforce partner business.
So you're from?
Originally I was born in England and then moved to Australia when I was 7. And then in 1992, I moved to America where I met my wife. And then we moved back to Australia in 1999. So we've been back since 1999.
So you have co-founded a business. So can you tell more about it?
Yeah, so obviously I'm no longer there, but for 4 years, I had 2 other business partners, and we founded a business that was called Visioneer 360 at the time. It's now called Clear, Clearr, so Clear with 2 R's, and a Salesforce partner business that specialized in analytics. So, we would build, for example, Sales and Service Cloud, but we always had a big emphasis on delivering insights. We would also implement CRM analytics, which some people might remember as Einstein Analytics, and also Tableau. And so I was there 4 years. I worked in primarily pre-sales, sales, and post-sales, and also did some of the hands-on work, but a lot of that work was done by our team of consultants.
So before coming to Tableau, what was your work, and can you tell about your entry into technology?
Yeah. So prior to Tableau, again, I had the business. Prior to the business, that was pretty much where I started in tech. So I started my tech journey very late. My early background, so university, was mechanical engineering, and I completed my degree. I worked for Procter & Gamble for about 2 years as a mechanical project engineer, but didn't really enjoy it. So I actually left engineering, went to America as a young man, and studied for church ministry. So did another 4-year degree, and then worked as a minister or a pastor for almost 20 years, and I had some pretty serious mental health issues, and as a result of those, I had quite a severe breakdown about 9 years ago, and was no longer at work as a minister or a pastor. Ended up being in a pretty horrible situation where I was unemployed and financially not in a good place. And then a friend of mine who owned a financial planning business asked me if I'd be interested in implementing Salesforce, which was a CRM. Now, I'd never heard of Salesforce, didn't know what a CRM was, had no background at all, but I agreed to have a try. And so, yeah, really long hours doing Trailhead, watching lots of YouTube, doing tons of searching on the internet for resources and answers. And after a few months, began to really enjoy it. And then from there, we had some complex reporting requirements that we could not deliver in Salesforce reports and dashboards. So we actually then, I had to learn and implement what was then Einstein Analytics, which later was renamed as Tableau CRM, which later was renamed what it is now, which is CRM Analytics. And as I got into the advanced analytics, the business insights, business intelligence, really enjoyed it. Very challenging. I had a lot to learn, but really loved it. I also got involved in the machine learning side of things with the AI. So I had to also go through a lot of online learning in that area with Einstein Discovery. And then we became, then we started our business. And then near the end of when I was in the business, we became Tableau partners. So I had to start learning Tableau then as well. So there's been a lot of learning along the way.
So coming out of the university as a mechanical engineer and becoming a minister and pastor, then coming into technology and starting your own business, and also now working in Tableau. So how do you define yourself, this diversity?
Yeah, it's been a really crazy journey and very late to the party with technology. I mean, I was 48 when I started my technology journey, and I'm loving it. I'm really enjoying it. I'm learning all the time. In terms of how I define myself, that's quite an interesting question. I'd have to say that I am a very curious and persistent learner. So I love to be challenged. I love to learn new things, new skills, whether it's technology or whether it's in the area of hobbies or whatever really the case may be. And the reason I say persistent is because, honestly, it hasn't been easy, right? Like, it's very often that I have felt overwhelmed. I felt unqualified. I struggled a lot with imposter syndrome. There were a lot of skills from my earlier life that did transfer over into my new career. So things like written and verbal communication, people skills, leadership, etc. But all of the technical skills had to be, learned. Most of it was self-taught. I have gone through a few courses and those have been great, but most of it's been self-taught.
So tell me, you as a lead solution engineer, working with the sales teams and trying to find the solution for the customers. So how is this? How you're enjoying it, and what is your work is about?
Yeah, look, it's an awesome role. I work with a great team of solution engineers. I work very closely with the sales team, so our account executives. So the easiest way to explain it would be to think through an example engagement with a customer. So what can happen? It might be, for example, that a customer has downloaded a Tableau trial. So that's then created in our Salesforce environment as a lead. It then goes to a business development rep who calls the prospect, and they then speak with the account executive. The account executive gets some understanding of who they are, what problems they're trying to solve, what the use cases are, a little bit about perhaps what their current state of systems looks like. But then, there's a need to dive deeper into the problems they're trying to solve, the challenges they have, what their current systems are, how they're currently performing reporting, how successful they are, what's easy, what's hard. And so that's when I get brought in. I also get brought in to give a demo of Tableau to the customer so they can see how easy Tableau is to use, how Tableau could solve their problems. And then it's a very interactive discussion with the customer, a combination of discovery, so better understanding the customer and their use cases and their data and their problems, and then also showing them what we can do and trying to perhaps give them a picture of what Tableau does, tell a story of how Tableau can solve their problems. And then it's very much customer by customer, whether that process continues and gets more technical, or whether it's then more of a conversation with our sales team. It's pretty common for it to go into further technical discussions. So, for example, a customer might, they might have some data in perhaps, for example, Salesforce, and then some in a data warehouse, some in people's spreadsheets, and they want to understand exactly how we'll connect all those dots and how people will collaborate. How do they join and prepare the actual data? How do people then use those dashboards to get insight? So that results in, again, more discussions, sometimes or quite often more of a deep dive demo into certain areas of the platform. But my role primarily, I'm the guy who's always asking, what problem are we trying to solve? For me, that's what it's all about. We're not selling a product, we're solving a problem. So if we're going in there and just pitching Tableau, but we don't understand what the customer's challenges are and their pain points, what problems they're trying to solve, then we're really going at it the wrong way. And that's my role, is to really dive into the customer's environment and use case. What are their problems and pain points? What are we trying to solve for them? Is Tableau a good fit? If so, demo it and try and solution it. Sometimes we'll build a proof of concept, sometimes, but very often we're just showing them using some fake data, how Tableau works and how it could help them. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yes. And what kind of businesses that you worked with, and which industries that belong to, and how different it is working with businesses which belongs to different industries?
Yeah, it's probably part of the job that I really enjoy, is the variety of customers that I get to work with. I've worked with everything from a very small not-for-profit with a few people to a mid-sized retail organization to a very large organization, like a Motorola or someone like Indeed, the job search engine, some of the banks, but really across a lot of different areas. I haven't done an awful lot in the enterprise space. Most of my work has been more of the mid space, mid-market / commercial. But it really just depends the work that needs to be done and what everybody's bandwidth is like in our team. We just share the workload. But again, the variety of working with different industries and segments, only in ANZ, by the way, that's my area, Australia, New Zealand. That variety, to me, it makes it a very interesting job. There's always a new challenge, a new story, a new use case, and that's part of what makes the job interesting and exciting.
And how you are able to be a good engineer and also a good people's person, because your job involves in both of it. How you are able to understand the business side of the technology, and how you are able to give the technology services and tools that you have and match with the customer's requirement.
That's a very good question. It's impossible to be a successful solution engineer without being able to grasp both the business and the technology sides. The advantage that I personally have, I mean, everyone's different. I think the advantage that I have, first of all, my previous background, as I said earlier, was all about people skills. So communication and listening and asking good questions and reading people. And as a mechanical engineer, I had a really good understanding of process, which is important. And then for me, 4 years of starting and running a business gives you a perspective on the business world that most people don't have. And I think it's extremely valuable. And then, of course, having implemented Salesforce and Tableau and CRM Analytics myself, you know, quite a good grasp on the actual technology. I have found that in my role, it is actually easy, if you're not careful, to get a bit rusty with the technology itself. So I always have a pro bono project going somewhere. So I've performed 2 Tableau implementations for free. I'm currently building out CRM Analytics for a charity in Sydney. That's been a lot of work. But the benefit of that, Sai, is that you're working very closely with the customer and you're working hands-on with the tools. So it isn't just a sales conversation, right? It's a lot more than that. And you have to constantly work at it. You're constantly trying to improve your ability to ask great questions, to improve your ability to listen and learn, keep the curiosity always fresh, to be able to get to the real problem. There's a principle in problem solving called the 5 whys. And the idea is that you don't just take that first answer on board. You're really peeling away the layers of the onion, as it were, and getting to the root problem. And that takes some creativity and some persistence and some experience to be able to do that. I'm very fortunate in that I find both technology and business to be super interesting. Some people love business, they have no time for technology. Other people love technology, not interested in business, and that's fine. But I love both. I find them both to be intriguing, and the overlap and the interplay to be quite fascinating.
And what scale of the businesses that you worked with?
Pardon me?
What is the scale of the businesses that you worked with?
The scale, again, I've worked with businesses with literally 2 people, all the way up to Fortune 500 companies. But most of the businesses I work with are in the middle. So it'd be very common for me to work with an organization that has somewhere from, let's say, 100 to 1,000 employees. That's pretty common. but I've ran the gamut. Like, yeah, and to me that's fun. It's good variety.
And how you developed this problem solving ability and skill set in order to uh, work with a company or the business which has two people and with a Fortune 500, 400 companies.
Problem solving. Yeah, I think a lot of that is just experience in confronting problems and understanding the problem is a huge part of it. You can't solve a problem you don't understand. So giving a lot of time to really defining the problem well and really having a good solid grip of what exactly you're trying to solve is critical. In terms of the different size organizations, I think sometimes people can be intimidated by the larger organizations. But I've always reminded myself that when I go into a discussion, they know things that I don't know, but I know things that they don't know. So not to be intimidated, to go in with a level of, it's kind of a combination of humility and confidence. I enjoy all of them. I enjoy the small business. I enjoy the enterprise. I enjoy the mid-market conversations. As long as people, as long as they're not antagonistic, as long as they're open-minded, then I think there's always a way forward.
So being in the present role and being also understanding the business side of the technology and also being the leader of your team, how you are able to adapt yourself to the constant change that is happening in the market or in the world.
Yeah, that's a huge part of being a solution engineer. It always has been, but I think more so today. I've never seen technology move as quickly as it is today. And I think that the rate of change will continue to grow so that change itself is exponential. When the tools that are facilitating change are evolving, then the rate of change itself will continue to grow, right? So a huge part of being a solution engineer for any organization, but especially in the software world, you're learning constantly. Like even today, part of my day was reviewing a video and a demo from an engineer who spoke at the recent Tableau conference last week in San Diego about some new technology that we're bringing out. And I'd heard of the technology, but not super familiar with it. And so I took some time, watched that video. I'm also doing training for my role, which is less technology related, but more of the business and people side. We do have some mandatory enablement that we have to go through often, but really a lot of the learning is left up to our initiative. If you don't enjoy learning, if you don't love learning, I probably wouldn't be a solution engineer because it's constant. It never ends. And the challenge often is just managing your time and your priorities. I have a family and a home, and I could literally spend my entire weekend every week learning and getting another certification and all that kind of thing. I'm learning the data cloud platform at the moment. I've got an exam coming up not long from now, but I spaced it out a bit. I didn't make my exam for the end of May. I made it for July, and that gives me more time to prepare and study. And that way, I try and keep a sensible work-life balance. But, even if I'm commuting to our office in the city, I'll quite often watch some training and do some reading. It's just who I am, and I think that the solution engineering role definitely attracts people with that mindset for sure.
And you have 3 countries connection. You England and United States and Australia. So how
4.
this is in, yeah.
I
So
actually have 4 because I also lived in Japan for a while.
so all these countries being having connection with this, how that is influencing uh, uh, you and with the customers that you interact with or the work that you do with people.
Yeah, I think it's an advantage having lived in the 4 countries, particularly having lived in the United States. Salesforce and Tableau are based in the United States. A lot of our internal content is created in the United States. So it's created from an American cultural perspective. So I think it's an advantage understanding that culture, because it isn't exactly the same as Australia. We speak the same language, but we speak the same language quite differently. And our cultures, although similar, are not identical. I always feel like if you've lived in different cultures, and particularly if you've tried to learn a different language, it just makes you a more well-rounded person. So I'm actually very thankful that I did live and work in Japan for a while. I grew up in England, lived in America for about 7 years. Really, Sydney is extremely diverse. I mean, I work with people from India, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, South Africa, Eastern Europe, the United Kingdom, the United States, France, and that's in a small team, right? And I think there's a lot of advantages to that because you have different perspectives, different viewpoints. Sometimes it's challenging, but that's just the way it is.
And which one is easy as a solution engineer, engineering or talking with customers?
I don't think any of it's easy. It's a very challenging job for sure. But that's one of the reasons I like it. Every customer is different. Every application of our technology is different. Every customer, there are common denominators, there are similarities, but every customer has a different problem to solve. I'll always come across a new use case or environment, whether it's their existing technology architecture or whether it's the way they do business, or there's always something unique, and I like that. But in terms of working with customers versus working with technology, which is harder, that's a tough question to answer. But I do think that digital transformation, data-driven transformation, I would suggest that it fails more often because of people and process than it fails because of platforms. Doesn't mean platforms aren't important, obviously, but you can have the best technology in the world. If it isn't implemented correctly, if you don't have some great business analyst who's really grasping the problems and the outcomes and the deliverables and the requirements and articulating those, if you don't have great internal alignment of stakeholders, if you don't have agreement on your vision, if you don't have great change management and training in place, and all of those are people related. So that's my quick answer to a question that could probably have a very long discussion about.
And What is driving you? What is your driving force, and what is motivating you to wake up in the morning and go do this?
Yeah, I've actually thought a lot about that over the last few months. Um, I tend to reflect a lot on life and career, and yeah, everybody's got to pay their bills. Everybody's got to make a paycheck, right? Beyond that basic need, my why is to build and to grow things. So I love having an impact. I love growing people and growing teams, and solving problems is a part of that, but also things like mentoring people. I mentor people. I spend a lot of my spare time creating content, which I share online. I don't have to do that, don't get paid to do that, but I do it because I want to make a difference. I want to have an impact. And that's really what drives me. And we live in a day where there's a lot of opportunity to have an impact that's global and have an impact that it will even last beyond our own demise, even when we're gone, because of the technology, the internet, and various ways of creating and publishing content, written, video, or verbal, whatever the case may be. So definitely for me, it's around building and growing and having an impact.
What is challenging for you in your present role?
Yeah, there's a level of complexity to customers' problems, and very often what's first communicated as being the problem is not the real problem. So it can take quite a lot of effort to get to the root problem and figure out what are we really trying to solve. I must ask that question every day, either of myself or of a colleague. What problem are we trying to solve? Because that's what it's all about. And identifying that can be quite challenging. Also, often you're working with organizations that have, gotten to where they are over time in an iterative way, in terms of they've added layers of complexity to their technology stack. So unraveling all of that and trying to figure out, how do we bring all this data together and then process it, or prepare it, process it, analyze it, and share it. How do we do that? Right. That's often quite challenging. But then there are also the people complexities. So navigating various layers of organizational dependencies, stakeholder maps, finding out, for example, who really has the authority to make a decision about this or this. If you're not careful, you could come up with a great solution and convince the wrong person. And then the person who really has the authority to make that change, you haven't convinced them and things don't go ahead. So, those things make my job challenging. And I think people problems and challenges in general are what can make life interesting / difficult depending on the situation. And that's, internally I work with an amazing team, but there can still be some complexities working with other teams, etc.
How is working with the business leaders or business owners who has a technology background and who don't have technology background?
Yeah, it's very common to be in a meeting where you have both. So very often I'll have a number of customers, a number of stakeholders from an organization in a call. Some are more technical, some are more business oriented. A few will understand both. The challenge there is how you communicate across that group. So you really have to be able to, really keep in mind your audience as you're communicating. Quite often I'll actually, mention to the customer that, for this call, we're not going to dive deep into the technical detail. However, more than happy to have another call to do that, with the appropriate people. It could be data engineers, data analysts, data scientists. But, hey, for this call, we've got business leadership. We've also got IT and data leadership. Because we've got such a broad spectrum of stakeholders on the call, we're not going to dive into a deep level of technical detail. We're going to focus more on high-level outcomes and challenges and strategy and etc. But it is challenging. I actually enjoy talking to both. I enjoy talking to business leaders. I enjoy talking to technical people. As long as people are open-minded, I'm happy to talk to them. The challenge you have is if someone comes into a meeting and they've just got a completely closed mind, it's very, very difficult. So let's say, for example, I don't work for Apple, right? But let's say I met with you and you were a huge Android fan and you would like, I'm never going to change Android. I love it. It's perfect. I could talk to you all day about Apple. It's not really going to make any difference, right? Because you've really got a very much a closed mindset. And it can be that way in our conversations, and that's a real dead end. But if people have an open mind at all, even partly open, you can have some great conversations.
And what is your approach working with uh, different industries? Like you said, you worked with banking industry and you worked with some other industry. So, how is your problem solving, approach to the applications that you work with and the architectures that you see is completely different from what you have already, solved before? So, how open you will be in order to solve the problem in a given time by the customer.
It's very important to talk the language of the business that you're working with. And if you're talking to a not-for-profit, the language you use about what's important to them is extremely different to the language and the terms and the concepts you'll use with a bank, which are extremely different to a retail business, etc. Right? I'm fortunate in that after 4 years of consulting, I have a lot of experience across many industries. But if I come across an industry I'm not familiar with, then it's important for me to do the research before I go into that conversation, to understand the background and the context. What are typical challenges in that particular industry? What are the trends? What's happening? What language do they use? What terms do they use, right? So, yeah. But again, to me, that makes it super interesting.
And what made you to be successful in the present role? Upskilling yourself or constant learning from the businesses that you work with?
Yeah, I'll just use terms I think I used before, which is persistent curiosity. Just refusing to give up, constantly learning. Being willing to say I don't know is very important, and asking questions. again, I do feel like I learned so much from starting and running a business that's relevant to this role. So that's really helped me a lot. But a lot of that is persistence, because starting and running a business was incredibly difficult. And many times I just wanted to quit. So if I hadn't have been persistent, I wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't have this role, right? I had someone one time say to me something like, "Oh, you're so smart. You know, you taught yourself financial services cloud and Einstein analytics and et cetera, et cetera." And it actually irritated me, because there's a lot of smart people in the world. I don't know how smart I am really, but I do know that I've put in a lot of effort. I've endured a lot of struggles. I've kept going when I didn't feel like keep going. I've attempted things that I knew I wasn't qualified for, and I just tried and had a go. I think a lot of it is just mindset and character. We focus today a lot on talent, but I think that your character is a lot more important than your talent.
There is a devotional person in you, working as a, priest or a father, and also there is a completely advanced logical thinker, being a technologist and being an engineer. So, how do you define two different, people in you?
Yeah, I don't think that they're mutually exclusive. I think they coexist quite happily. um, I still, uh, I still think a lot philosophically. I'm a very philosophical person. If you look at my blog posts on my blog site, some are very scientific and some are very philosophical. It's, if you look over history or in the present day, there's a lot of people that, they had kind of different facets to their personality. My favorite probably is Leonardo da Vinci. Leonardo da Vinci was an artist, but also an engineer, right? Now I'm not an artist, but I'm very creative. I love science. I love figuring out why things are the way they are and how to fix problems. But I also love going out for a walk and just thinking about life and death and what's important and how to be happy and God and everything, right? I don't really have a problem with being both. I personally think that when it comes to theology or philosophy, I think it's very important to think through what's important to you, what brings you joy, making others happy, having a positive impact on society, thinking through why you're here and what you're doing with your time. I do find, Sai, that everyone has a different personality. I've always been very introspective, sometimes to a fault, sometimes too much. But I think everybody should take the time to think through, kind of, if you want to call them, the big questions of life.
And last, what is your observation about the evolution in the technology? Because you have been in technology for a long time, you saw the constant change that is happening. Now we are at a stage where, as a human beings, we are making machines to work by themselves. They're calling it as AI, and where we are today and what is going to be future.
It's very difficult to make any kind of prediction. 2 years ago, we had no idea that Gen AI and LLMs and ChatGPT and Llama and the rest of them would be what they are today. Things are advancing very quickly. I don't think anyone quite knows how to govern them. It's a huge question that a lot of very smart minds are debating at the moment. Ethics, governance. Just because AI can do something doesn't mean it should do something. It's also a question around data privacy as well. What really interests me, and I don't know when this will happen, even if it will be in my lifetime, I don't know, but it seems to me from my limited understanding of Gen AI and LLMs that what really helped things take off was processing power and data availability. Well, when I look at something like quantum computing, I kind of ask myself if we can realize the vision of that and given, the order of magnitude or more capability of that technology compared to what we have in traditional computing, digital computing. Who knows where we're going to be once that kicks off. I think you'd have to be very brave to predict where we're going to be in even 5 years, because things are changing so fast. Even, for example, with Tableau, the ability now to analyze your data using conversational prompts instead of coding in SQL or using a drag and drop interface to build out dashboards, to actually ask questions in regular human language. That's advanced hugely in the last 12 months, and will continue to do so. You have to then think through what's the impact of that on, for example, the roles of data analysts. I personally don't believe data analysts will be replaced. What I hope will happen is that they'll be freed up from low value repetitive work to high value investigative analytical work. So we shall see. But hold on tight, because it's going to be a crazy ride. That's all I can say.
And how you're able to be a good leader for your team and make them work for your customer and try to solve the business problem with the technology solution that you have. How you make things happen with your team, and how you are able to communicate with them the business problem and try to convert into the technology services and tools that you have.
So I don't have anyone that reports to me in my current role. But I do work with an extended team. So I work with a business value team, a sales team, a service team, other solution engineers. So getting them on board, a lot of that is it comes down to communication. So being able to clearly communicate the value of what we're trying to provide, trying to clearly articulate and define the customer problem, those are critical.
And at last, as an expert, as a technologist, as a experienced professional, what is your observation about my work, me communicating, having global communications? What is your observation?
Yeah, I think that it's an interesting day that we live in, Sai. anyone who has the initiative and is willing to put in the effort can be a content creator, right? Can foster a community. If you look at the Salesforce and Tableau communities, they're extremely powerful in terms of the impact and the influence. I try and go in our communities several times a week just to see what questions people are asking. Sometimes I'll jump in and try and help solve them. Other times I just want to know what challenges are people having. When I talked before about my why being to grow and to have an impact, one way I try and do that, like yourself, is through content creation. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I know that the ones that are successful are the ones that are just consistent. They just keep delivering content, whether it has 2 views or 2,000 views or 2 million views. Just keep putting that content out there. If it helps one person, great. If it helps 1,000, great. And overall, eventually it benefits the creator as well as the consumer, right? So I think it's a good thing.
I did masters in software engineering, also bachelors in computer science and engineering. Right now I'm working as a DevOps engineer for a UK company, remotely from India. So that's my full-time role. Apart from that, I'm trying to communicate with industry leaders and experts like you who are already solving different kinds of problems and trying to understand the business side of the technology, also the engineering side of the technology. I'm trying to know how you people are doing things and making things happen. What I'm going to learn with this communications and how I'm going to use this knowledge and how this is going to be helpful for me in future.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that people that are able to grasp business and technology and clearly articulate the problems and the solutions for both are always going to be very valuable. I'm going to have to run, Sai.
Sure. So can I put this video on my YouTube channel with your permission?
Yeah, of course. And if you share it on LinkedIn, you can tag me. That's good.
Sure. And also, can I put this audio and video clip on my podcast, website, internet, social media, everywhere with your permission?
Yeah, no worries.
Thank you very much again for your valuable time and sharing your experience and answering my questions.
You're welcome. Nice to meet you, Sai.
Thank you, sir. Take care. Bye.